Narayanamaskitam naram cheva narottamam devim sarasatim vyasam tito jayodhira nashtaparesho vadvesu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamashuki bhakti bhavati naistiki Nigamakaparitam param shukamakaramita dravisamitam pivata bhagavatam ashiram ahora hora sikogaram Krishna sadam apagade damagini karonashta dushamasha parana kodhanoditam Ramapiadavishuddha Vishadamivo Samyapyadena Virambrukshanam Prakyahido Homohadatvanam Sanklesha Nirvanamasanti Nanyatam Anarto Shakshama Shakshat Bhaktiyam Lokasajana Chakra Shatpare Samitam Atmanamashtamune Anagranti Korban Korbantiatikita Bhutakana Hare Om Maganati Manandasya Ganagana Sarakaya Chaksurin Miritam Yana Tashmai Sigirvedamaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupakaram Darati Swaparantikam Bandeham Siguru Sita Parakamaram Shigarun Vaishnavam Sta Sirupam Sagaritam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Namam Vishnu Paraya Krishna Vastaya Bhutare Simati Bhakti Vedanta Shami Tanam Namaste Sarasati Devi Guru Charya Nivashes Sanyori Praskata Desana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Good to be with you all again after our relishable Motivational Monday yesterday, where I basically recapitulated as best I could the wonderful talk that Radhika Raman had given in Salt Lake City on Balaram Purnima. Such a great culture we have. The more you copy, the more you repeat what someone else said, the more you become purified. Niskinchana Shah Bhagavad Bhajanmakasha Param Parama Jikamasha Sandarshanam Vishayanamata Ahanda says that that's a Nesham Matishta, but that was the verse. It says the whole secret of success is to take the dust of the lotus feet of the more advanced spiritualists on your head. And that literally taking the dust from their feet on your head means to hear very attentively what they said and then to repeat it. What the repetition does, it allows you to hear the message a second time. And because you're repeating it, it's coming from your mouth, and we're all, frankly, a little bit egotistical, we tend to listen to ourselves. You've heard the term, he loves the sound of his own voice, or the sound of his name is the sweetest sound in the whole world. So using that principle in our favor, that which is normally the biggest sign of illusion and madness, we can still dovetail that tendency to want to hear our name in our own voice by listening to the messages of the previous Acharya and then repeating them to an audience, in which case we become the number one most attentive listeners. And so I was so impressed with the talk that Radhika Raman gave last Sunday at Salt Lake Temple on Balaram that I did my best to repeat it to you word for word yesterday, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it didn't stop you from also accessing the talk, which was preserved on our Salt Lake City, Hare Krishna Temple, Salt Lake City Facebook page. All right. Thanks again, Rakesh, for joining us. Brent, Haribol, 3 pranams side by side. Haribol to Jean, Haribol to William. Ram Kishore has got his booth at the Minnesota Farmers Market, serving the best food in the universe. His words, no reason to doubt them. Undoubtedly true. Good morning, Jean. We're revisiting for, I guess, at least the 4th time, the 22nd verse in the 5th chapter, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story, the absolute truth. Idami pamsas tapasasu tashibashi tasya shuktasya avitito aditir kavibir yad utamashoka gananavanana. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord who is defined in choice poetry. One of the names of the Lord is Uddama. Tama means ignorance, and Uddama means above the ignorance. So the words that are used to glorify the Lord are not used to refer to any mundane, ordinary, or even extraordinary historical personality. But the words themselves spring directly from the spiritual world. As I just said, they come from the lips of the realized souls like honey flowing, and we can only hope to catch some of that honey in our own ears, after which it flows down and sweetens our heart. Our heart then becomes purified. Then the seed of love of God has good, nutritious soil and no impediments to its growth. It eventually grows higher and higher and higher and reaches the lotus feet of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And we end up going back to home, back to God. That's the purpose of all learning, of all austerities, of all penances, of all sacrifices, is some or other to get a position amongst the servants of the Lord. In the material world, Purusha Prakritishtahi Bhakti Prakritim Karanam Gunasangasya Sada Sadyona Janmashar. The cause of our material entanglement in this world is that we for us, being servant is anathema. We think that if we're a servant, we've failed. We look down on our servants. So we think that if we're a servant, we're being looked down on. We're being minimized or condescended to. So everybody wants to, at all costs, avoid being a servant. Even that servant, he takes a salary. And then with that salary, he goes out somewhere and he has waiters bowing to him. He has ushers, parking delays. Some or other, even the servant wants to be a master on some level in this material world. That goes across the board. All those things which are done by God, directly or indirectly, we think we are the doers. We think we're the cause of the results of our activities. That means we think of ourselves as the masters, as the sovereigns. One poet put it, we like to think of ourselves as the monarch of all that we survey. There was a story about severe competition during the early days of the railroads when the first sleeper cars came available. And for the first time, you didn't have to sit upright on a bench if you were traveling by rails cross country. You could pay a little more and have a nice way to lie down and sleep and go to sleep, and you traveled 500 miles by the time you wake up and you're refreshed. And so both Carnegie and Pullman had competing railroad lines with sleeper cars, and they wanted to promote their sleeper cars to the point that each was undercutting the prices of the others and taking away their profits. So finally, Carnegie suggested a tete-a-tete between himself and Andrew Pullman to see if they could work out some compromise so that they wouldn't be both losing their shirts in the competitive price-cutting war. So Andrew Carnegie suggested that they, instead of manufacturing two different sleeping cars, they combine their resources and have one factory and manufacture one car, which would be used by both competing railways. And Pullman was kind of a little bit obstinate, skeptical, and he wanted something to sweeten the deal. And so he said, well, what will we call this new revolutionary cutting-edge sleeping car that everyone's going to be raving about? And Carnegie, in his brilliance, sealed the deal when he said, well, of course we'll call it the Pullman car, won't we? And then Pullman was only too happy to sign the deal because his name would be on everyone's lips. So we take the knowledge that we get coming down from the spiritual world through the civic session, and then we repeat it as best we can. And that process of Shravanam Kirtanam results in Smaranam. Remember Krishna and Padasevanam, then serving the lotus feet, Archanam, doing worship, and Arti, Vandanam, Dasam, offering prayers, serving the Lord. Sakyam, being a friend of the Lord, and Atma, Nivedam, ultimately following the footsteps of Bali Maharaj, giving everything over to the Lord unreservedly with the realization that Krishna owns everything anyway. There is no other destination or fruit of the cultivation of knowledge austerities. Real utilization of the advancement of knowledge is to establish the primacy of the Lord, the glories of the Lord. This happened 5,000 years ago. Krishna was on the planet. He was in the Yadu dynasty. The Yadu dynasty was a minor dynasty. Yadu, his forefather, had been cursed by Maharaj Parava, not ever to become king. So none of the Yadus were ever able to attain ascendancy. dominance over other kings because of this ancient curse. Of course, Krishna is the king of kings, but he observes protocol. He saves the face of his devotees. So in the God, Maharaj Yudhishthira was going to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice, wherein all the kings of the world would pay tribute to him, and then he in turn got to nominate the first person, the one that everybody in the assembly should worship. And then Yudhishthira and Sahadev, they nominated Krishna as the first person. And more or less the whole world was obligated in order to recognize and acknowledge that. And they all, with a couple of exceptions, offered their obeisances to Krishna. So similarly, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is doing a sacrifice all over the world. Just like Yudhishthira did a yajna, Rajasuya sacrifice, and involved participation from all parts of the world. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness, founded by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is also doing the sacrifice of the age, the Sankirtan Yajna. Krishna Vanasi Sankarsham Sangapanu Yajna Sankirtana Priya Yajanti Pishu Medashaha Kaledo Sheni Teda Janasya Kirtana Deva Krishna Samukti Sangapanam. In spite of all the faults of this age, there is one great benefit, and that is that by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, you'll get liberation from all things that are going to hold you back in spiritual life. And so this worldwide yajna of chanting Hare Krishna, distributing prasadam, observing festivals is going on throughout the world by the grace of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And its purpose is to show people that your cultivation of knowledge, your austerities, your elevation, your high birth, your good looks are as naught. They're good for nothing unless you use them to establish the glories of the Lord. Real knowledge, scientific knowledge, is engaged in the service of the Lord, and this has the moniker. All these activities are called Hari Kirtana. Kirtana means to glorify the Lord. Sometimes we think of kirtan with the drum, with cymbals, harmonium, microphone. That's kirtan. That's sankirtan. That's when a group of like-minded devotees get together and they enjoy each other's association, and they enjoy singing the name of the Lord with musical instruments and talented vocalists who take the lead. So that's actually technically that's sankirtan. But kirtan means any time that you're discussing the Lord, whether you're doing it online, as we are this morning, whether you're doing it one-on-one, whether you're doing it at a Sunday feast, whether you're telling your barber about an interesting story that you heard last Sunday at the Hare Krishna feast. Maybe your workout partner, your spotter on the bench press, you're sharing some insight that you got by reading one of Prabhupada's books. So this is a worldwide yajna, sacrifice, which is being undertaken for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to get us tight, get us securely engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. And that only will free us from birth, death, disease, and old age. Atam atabujam padam vaja dvaya prashara lashana gahitevi janitit bhagavan maho nachanyo go pracharindi chanvam. The only way one can get free from the pains and miseries, sharp stabs of birth, death, disease, and old age, is through the mercy, is by taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord through His devotees and receiving His mercy. Ata padambuja prashada lashana garetihi. Without the prashada, without the mercy of the Lord, janiti tadvam bhagavan mehimo, the absolute truth, which is available through the servants of the Lord, those who are engaged in the servants of the Lord, will never be discernible, will never be realized by the aspiring practitioner. Kuntidevi says it all in the 44th verse of the 8th chapter, the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Pritayitam kalapadai parinuktaradunayam mandam jaha shavaikanto mahami bhashaisanam. Kuntidevi glorified the Lord with Uttama Shloka, choice poetic words, some of them of her own composition, some of them undoubtedly she'd heard great saints like Narada Rishi, Vyasadeva speak, some she might have picked out of a book that she read. But she spoke these beautiful words of glorification to the Lord. Janmai Shriya Shutasmi Riri Mamanabara Navaritim Tomani Twamakinchanago Chara Viparashantu Shashatatajigatgara Bhavato darshanam manam apanarvadarshanam Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nanda Gopa Kumara Govinaya Namo Namah. On and on and on and on. And the result of it was that Krishna mildly, actually uses the word mildly, smiled. When you smile mildly, that means you're not grinning like a monkey, but you're smiling mildly. The mild smile is what you do when you're deeply satisfied. The wide, gawking smile is something when something goes through you, in and out, something quick, like an electrical charge or like a taser. But when you mildly smile, it means that you're deeply satisfied. Krishna mildly smiled at Kunti after she had delivered poetic verses at his lotus feet. And those poetic verses were from the lips of someone who had endured so many sufferings, so many challenges, so many betrayals during her lifetime, and passed each and every one of those tests. And said when Kunti basked in the sun-like rays of Krishna's smile, it says that she got goosebumps all over her body. Her hackles began to rise, and she began to shiver in ecstasy. That smile is the goal of all knowledge, all austerities, all penances, all learning. And the thing is, when we begin to evoke the smile of Krishna by offering him choice words of poetry like flower petals, we embark upon an activity which never ends, to which we never come to the end, in which we never become exhausted. The reason is that the glories of the Lord are limitless. Having started, you never ever finish. Gunatmanas tepi gunamba matami tavanesha kaisha kaleni abhavan upamsaka myadya bashaha. Gunatmanas, guna means, in the material sense, it means ropes, the things that bind us to this material world. But in the spiritual sense, guna means qualities or attributes. And when they refer to the Lord, it means eternal spiritual qualities. Krishna's wealth is not limited like the wealth of an ordinary man, Elon Musk. Krishna's unlimited wealth, and therefore it's spiritual. Krishna's beauty is unlimited. It's not just while he's young, but he's Navayovanam, he's eternally young, therefore he's eternally beautiful. Krishna's knowledge is unlimited. So the gunas, the Krishna's qualities, are unlimited. Each and every one of the qualities you could describe, you could go on and on and on forever. And so once you embark upon describing the qualities of the Lord, that's it. You've stumbled right in the middle of your eternal engagement. It says that the scientists may one day know how many grains of sand there are in the beach. They may know how many drops of water there are in the ocean. They may know how many stars there are in the sky. They may know how many atoms comprise this Earth planet. But nobody will ever know the extent of the gunas, the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So since time immemorial, from unlimited saints and sages, not the least of one, which is the one whose appearance day we celebrate on Sunday, Lord Balaram, in another incarnation is Anantashesha. Anantashesha is the many-hooded serpent of the Lord, on whose coils the Lord lies down and rests, and over whom the heads of Anantashesha protect the Lord. And while they're protecting him, since forever, those many, many heads of Anantashesha have been reciting the glories of the Lord. It has not come to the end. In fact, he's said to barely be getting warmed up. So on one level, those smile of the Lord upon his devotees is the most deeply satisfying feeling that one could possibly have. And on the other hand, we're all looking for some engagement, some relationship, which does not have an end, which is unending. We all get pleasure from relationships, but to the same degree in this material would we get pleasure, to that same degree we get pain, loss, and suffering when we're separated from our loved ones. Like plants and sticks, They come together in the water, or like travelers, gather for one night at a motel or an inn. In the cafe, they eat, they talk, they get to know each other, and then they're separated, each one going on their different ways in the morning. Similarly, we come together in terms of family, friends, and country. We relish those relationships, but then inevitably, each one has to go their own way according to their past karma, or according to if you're planks and sticks and bits of cotton, you have to go according to the flow of the water or the movement of the wind. We're brought together for some time. We achieve attachments. We get pleasure out of each other, but ultimately we're crestfallen, disappointed, because the law of nature is that we all have to be separated. And yet, once you embark upon the Udamashoka, Ayarati Vaipamsham Udyamasham Chara Dasharatya Udamashoka Vartyam, the rising and setting of the sun just takes one day away from the lifespan of the materialist. He's only one day closer to death. No materialist should get up and say good morning. If he's not God-centered, what's good about it? He's just 24 hours closer to death. Maybe overnight while he was sleeping, his investments gained $1 million. Maybe his material affluence increased by multiple factors while he was sleeping and not even working in the night. But even so, he shouldn't get up and say good morning if he doesn't have any sense that God made the morning. Because for him, even though he's $1 million richer and didn't lift a finger for it, he's one day closer to death. And death is that moment when everything will be taken away. Yuktashu Paramatashak Katumbashak Asasad Samay Karuyo Parioperation said Paranjana, who was very attached to his wife Paranjani, eventually that day came when he was separated by death from his wife, from his children, and all that he loved. And he was so full of anxiety, he was so stressed out. His mind was the furthest thing from being peaceful at the time of leaving this body. If you want a good result, if you want to transition to a higher material body or a spiritual body, the number one prerequisite is your mind has to be peaceful. And the number one disturbance to the peace and tranquility of the mind is attachment to family members. There is no other attachment which even comes close to the attachment to family members. So when Paranjana had to leave his family members, Yuktashu Pramatasha means nutcase. He was beside himself. He was mad. Now he was leaving his body, and all he could think about was, how will my family members maintain themselves? Navabhina, will they not be like passengers aboard a ship with no navigator and no direction? And that was his only thought at the time of death. And the result was, then he took his next birth in the material world, in the opposite gender, to undergo another round of birth, death, disease, and old age. Ultimately, though, however, he married in his next life a great Krishna conscious king who left his body, Malayavaja, in full Krishna consciousness. And as a result of that association, the Lord appeared to Paranjani as the Supersoul and directed her, back home, back to God. And the only purpose of all elevated activities is to receive the satisfied smile of the Supreme Personality of God. And those who spend their days glorifying the Lord with Uttama Shloka Varteya, for them, they are not robbed. They are not a day closer to death. They are immortal. They are engaged as immortal souls in the immortal activity of glorifying the immortal Lord with immortal Uttama Shloka worth. So there is no effect of death upon those who have the names of the Lord on their lips, who are receiving the glories of the Lord through their ears, who are seeing the form of the Lord with their eyes, smelling the tulsi and flowers offered to the Lord with their nose, tasting prasadam with their tongue. There is no effect of time. Of course, this current body will shrivel and it will pass away. But the result will be that out of or from inside this material coil or tabernacle, the eternal spiritual form will have matured, and one will rise from the ashes of this material body, just like fire will rise from wood and ascend. That is what the devotee has to look forward to. Just go on daily, constantly, tesham, satata, yuktanam, bhajatam, glorifying the Lord without cessation and with great feelings of love and affection from within the heart. And Krishna will infallibly guide you back to home, back to Godhead. So one's dropping of this current and final material body after who knows how many prior incarnations will only be a formality. You may have heard me tell this story before. It's one of my favorite stories. It happened around sometime between 1974 and 1975. There wasn't internet or cell phones in those days, so we got news from other temples, other parts of the world by mail, and it usually came from Karundar. Karundar was Prabhupada's go-to person. Karundar was basically sort of over the whole movement. You might have thought at that time Karundar was Prabhupada's designee, but Karundar used to send out bulletins by mail about any significant occurrence. And so in Australia, where my wife and I joined in, where we served from 70 to 75, we got this bulletin from Karundar about Janmashtami. Now, this is on my mind because Janmashtami is coming up in a week. We're going to celebrate Janmashtami, the birthday of Krishna, as part of our Sunday feast here in Spanish Fork next Sunday from 5 to 8. If you're in Utah Valley, please come and join us. Divya Narayan's dance troupe will be performing. We'll have a wonderful sacred bathing ceremony, lots of chanting, and great prasad. And then the following day, which is the actual day, we'll celebrate it in Salt Lake City, beginning at 7 o'clock. So Sunday, Spanish Fork begins at 5 o'clock. Salt Lake City begins at 7 o'clock and goes all the way till midnight in Salt Lake City. So if you're anywhere in Utah, please come and join one or another of these services. So it was Janmashtami in South Africa, let's say 1974. A lot of Indians in South Africa, huge Indians. So the devotees had gotten a park and set up a huge tent, and there were 10,000 people. It was outdoors. There was no indoor facility big enough to hold 10,000 people. And devotees were on a big stage, and they were having a kirtan. And the kirtan was leading up to the midnight hour, at which time you blow the conch shell, bang the gongs, open up the deities, and have a magnificent midnight ceremony to honor the Lord. And that's because the Lord appeared exactly at midnight in the prison house of Kamsa. So here we are, 10,000 people in an outdoor bando, big stage. The best kirtan singers are up there singing, counting down till the midnight hour. It's 11, it's 11:15, 11:45, 11:50, 11:55, at 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, the countdown. Deities open, big culminating arti. And so on the stage, it were just the best kirtan drummers and cartel players and singers. But there was one older gentleman who came up onto the stage. He wasn't designated, he wasn't official, he wasn't supposed to be there, but he didn't have singing abilities necessarily. He didn't play a cartel or drum. He wasn't youthful. He couldn't dance around like everyone else. So he's a bit of an anomaly up there. But no one asked him to get down because he was a wonderful devotee, life member, never lived in the temple, but always attended the temple. His children and grandchildren all became initiated devotees and did service. And he did service and he donated quite liberally. He'd been a very wealthy, successful businessman, quite generous in donating the temple. So when he got up onto the stage, and he was in his 80s, no one really had the heart to tell him to get down. So, so the kirtan goes on and on and on and on, and then finally gets to a minute before midnight, 11:59. So tension gets up, the excitement is, you can't imagine. It's at its highest pitch. And this gentleman, his dancing, even though he's 80 or so, his dancing gets more and more frantic. And then just before the conch shell blows, the gong sound, and the curtains dramatically open for the midnight darshan of the Lord, everybody on stage heard this man, saw and heard this man raise his arms, look up, and say, "Krishna has come for me on Garuda," and his body crumpled. And to the stage, to remain lifeless and inert. They felt for a pulse. There was no pulse. So unseen to the material eyes, at the same moment, his visible material body, aged, rheumatic, diseased, dropped for the last time to the ground. Unseen to material eyes, his spiritual form, his subtle spiritual form, like a cool flame, would have left the wood of his material body, the crude stuff of his material body, and in a subtle spiritual unseen form would have ascended with Krishna and Garuda back to home, back to Godhead. So that was why he was a successful family man. He was a successful business entrepreneur. That's why anyone should aspire to be a successful scientist or a successful housewife or a successful poet or a successful astronaut or a successful king. Whatever it is, your success will be determined by whether you can put a smile on the face of the Lord, by whether the Lord at some not too distant point in the future will come for you at the time of leaving your body, seated on Garuda, to snatch you up, go back to home, back to God. And if you're in the company, akshodhanam darshanam phalam darshanam hi akto tanu phalam gatra shangato jiva phalam kirtanam hi sudurabhat bhagavati loke. If you're rubbing shoulders with the great saints who are honoring the Lord with choice poetry, if you're hearing with your ears the songs sung by the great purified souls, if you're saying with your tongue the glories of the Lord, then that rubbing shoulders, that hearing, and that speaking, they're all the purpose for which you've been given this material body. If it's all done in the association of devotees, you're eminently fortunate, because pure devotees of the Lord are very, very rare. On the other hand, should one not take the opportunity of this human form of life and devotional association to sing and chant the glories of the Lord and take prasadam, there are some negative statements sent your way by no less than Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva. I think we might have mentioned him last week. I love to go through these verses. They're a little acerbic so far as the non-God-centered people are concerned. Bile batar kamri karmanye na srinivdi karnapudana jivasiti dardara natya pagaya gurakarham. These verses are found pretty much in the 3rd chapter, the 2nd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bile batar kamri karmanye na srinivdi karnapudana. Sukadeva Goswami, one who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the Supreme Personality of God, and has not sung or loudly chanted the glories of the Lord, is considered to possess ear holes like the holes of the snake and tongues like the tongues of a frog. Now, I used to think, well, why ear holes like those? Isn't the snake when the flute player plays, isn't the snake mesmerized by the music? So why are in this verse are the ear holes of the snake considered useless, as if they didn't hear? Because we all imagine that the snake is moving according to the notes of the music. But I heard later that the snake doesn't hear very well. Rather, he's mesmerized by the motion of the snake charmer. It's more a visual thing than an oral thing. So those ears which do not hear the glories of the Lord, like the ear holes of snake, and the tongues like the tongue of a frog. There's a concert of frogs by reservoirs of waters on a summer evening. The frogs themselves think that they have beautiful, mellifluous voices. Actually, their voices are not exactly flowing like nectar into our ears. But the effect of that audibility is that snakes identify the whereabouts of the frogs and comes to eat them. Similarly, we're meant to glorify the Lord. That's why we were given tongues and ears. And if we use our tongues, Sotavyani Rajanam Ninam Santipasham Nidra, just talking about the mundane politics and economics of this material world, then we're not using the tongue, nor are we using the ears for the purpose they were given us. And then it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to continue in this lifetime wasting or squandering the resources that God gave you. The chapter goes on here in the 21st one. Bile Batra Bara Param Kirirajasam Apyana Savo Corona Koritelasham Halola Shat Kanchana Kanchanava. That turban, which is not bowed down before the Lord of the Lord, is a great burden only. In this ocean of birth, death, disease, and old age, any ocean, anytime you're submerged in water, any thick covering cloth, as good as it might be to protect you against cold and wind on the surface of the land, it is a negative. It is a liability in the water because it gets all waterlogged and makes you very heavy and then drags you to the bottom. So that crown, that turban, which indicates worldly success and prosperity, is only a liability as far as spiritual life is concerned, unless that crown is bowed down at the lotus feet of the Lord. And those hands which do not serve the Lord, do not play musical instruments, do not offer the arti, make flower gardens, or cook for the Lord. Those hands are like the hands of a dead man if not engaged in the service of the Lord. So these are all assets, talents, and abilities that we've been given, and we're meant to dedicate them to achieve perfection of the senses by engaging them in the Lord of the senses, Rishikesha, Rishikena, Bhakti, Uttama. Bhakti, or the consummation of the human form of life, the perfection of the energy and lifetime we're given, is meant to dovetail everything in the service of the Lord. And this is particularly important for people who are above the average cut. They're automatically, by definition, leaders in society as teachers, as successful businessmen or scientists, or as parents. And they have a particular responsibility to take the talents and abilities that they have and sharpen them. On Sunday night, when Radhika Raman was talking about Lord Balaram as the perfect teacher, Radhika Raman mentioned that the two qualities of a good teacher are compassion. Teacher, if the student wants to, if the student is willing, doesn't matter what level of intelligence or what IQ the student has. If the student is willing to learn and to put in the time, the teacher will always extend herself or himself to that student. Now, on the other hand, as well as being very compassionate and sensitive to the students, the good teacher is also very strict. The student has to be willing to put in the work, not goof off, and reciprocate fully with the time and attention that the teacher gives. So I looked over at Mark. Mark is our teacher in the congregation. He teaches intermediate school. I follow him on Facebook, and I can understand from his Facebook posts that he loves teaching, that his students love him. He's always thinking about innovative, arresting ways to present the subject matter so that students will retain it more. And when his rotational turn to give the Saturday night talks in Salt Lake City come up, everybody looks forward to it because he's so comfortable. He's been in front of audiences his whole life long, and difficult audiences with short attention spans. He's gotten so expert at communication that he is just a top-notch communicator of Krishna consciousness. So it's particularly important for those who are blessed by God to use those blessings and to be a blessing to others. When you're favored by Krishna, it is only so that you can then pass that favor on. Be an example of Krishna consciousness. Be a light on the path back to home, back to Godhead. Be a signpost about which direction people can go to make their life successful. If those people are particularly talented and gifted, set the example of Krishna consciousness. If to be a scientist means to be Krishna conscious, if to be an athlete means to be Krishna conscious, if to be a successful businessman means to be Krishna consciousness, if to raise a great family means to be Krishna consciousness, then who would not become Krishna consciousness following the lead of all these successful Krishna conscious people? Yaja rachari stasis tatadevatar saya parano kuyute logus tad anuvarjate. Whatever a great man does, common men will follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So those of us who have received Krishna consciousness have twofold duties: to repeat it to anybody and everybody is willing to listen, that will do good to ourselves. That will do good to others. Om Tat Sat. So tomorrow we'll talk about some of the great influential souls, such as King Prataparuja, who used their Krishna consciousness to do exactly what we're talking about, to lead others on the right path, back to home, back to God. Thanks, Jean and William, as always. His granddaughter likes my smiling. She may not understand the concepts that we're sharing here, but she likes the body language. Someone said, if you want to understand where a televangelist is at, just turn the sound down and watch and see whether he's like really dark and foreboding and threatening and kind of on a bummer, or whether he's really having a good time sharing and communicating the joy and the upliftment of spirituality. So I hope that when you do the experiment of turning down the audio, I pass the test for grandparents and grandchildren alike. Ram Kishore, good luck with your food booth at the farmer's market in Minnesota. I just wish I could be there. And Malaji Preeti's been posting, and Mahatma has been posting these burgers. These, I don't know what they are. There's like a homemade bun, which kind of looks like a clamshell. It's open, and I can see a roasted zucchini stuck in there, and then some sort of little, like the Maharati burgers. It's kind of like a mini. And Mahatma, wherever she lives, I think it's in Mexico, she's saying, you can order these, we'll deliver them, or you can pick them up. And I'm like, wouldn't I like to be in Mexico right now so I could order some of those on my doorstep? But I hope I can get the recipe for that. There's little mini zucchini burgers, veggie burgers with homemade buns. They look really sumptuous. Some of our listeners are doing great things. Malaji Preeti's distributing lots of books in Malaysia. She just got Tamil translations of the books, and so she's distributing to those people from Tamil ancestry in Malaysia, of whom there are quite a large number. There is Anjali, who goes out from Phoenix, who's a frequent listener, and she's a Patreon member. She goes out on Sankirtan, and she has a beautiful voice, so she leads the kirtan. She engages the kids down there in Phoenix. Ram Kishore is always posting beautiful recipes online. You can become Facebook friends with any and all of these people and get further inspired by their achievements in Krishna consciousness. Jai Sri Radhe has a magnificent store, the most elaborate store for deity worship paraphernalia that I've seen anywhere out of Florida. She's right here in the comments section too, so you can go ahead and make friends with her and consider upgrading your deity worship in your home. Wow, I didn't know Prashant was here. Yeah, I scrolled down in the comments here, and he's got all the verses. It's a red letter day when Prashant joins us. Yajara Tirishtash. And he gives us the reference for Paranjana, when Paranjana is leaving his body and being separated from his family members. Bile Bhatakram, the tongue is like that of a frog, the ear holes are like that of a snake. Yes. Jai Sri Radhe says she has to run to the store, in fact, because of Janmashtami coming up. She has tons and tons of orders to get out for Janmashtami. So we're very happy that you're busy selling people and temples, deity paraphernalia prior to Janmashtami. Yatara Purushatmanam Dasham. The elderly dancing devotee. Yeah, I've told that story before. So if you're a regular listener like Rob, you might have heard. Have you heard that one before, Rob? He's got his. Yeah.
I'm not entirely certain.
Well, if you want to remember, if you hear something and you want to remember it, you know what you have to do, right?
Repeat it?
Yeah, tell that story to Cal. Read it, or recall it to him as a bedtime story, or someone you've been talking to in the gardens, or something like that, or you're a barber. Just find someone who's willing to listen, and then you'll embed it within your spirit. It's such a good story. All right. Any wrap up, concluding words, Rob, for us?
If you choose to speak like a frog, you'll croak like a frog. The snake of death will find you. But if you speak and sing the glories of Krishna's pastimes and you chant his names, then you will entrance the snake of death.
Yeah, he'll assist you. Instead of harassing you, he'll assist you in going back to home, back to Godhead. Yes. Jai Sri Radhe says, in fact, Lord Chaitanya has prepared us for this pandemic and all this so-called aloneness with this online worldwide sharing. The web are our streets. Yes, we're doing Sankirtan on the streets of the internet, cyber streets. That's a good point. She says we share Taruparu's lectures here and all our Facebook pages. Thank you very much, any of you who like and share. You encourage me to come back day after day, week after week, to spend time with you. But I've got a big day today. We've got, yesterday we cooked, on Mondays we cook up all the zucchinis and peppers and tomatoes from the previous week. So we cooked 10 big trays of zucchini and peppers, and we fried the curd and we put them together and we're freezing them. We'll bring them out for the Festival of Colors in about a month's time. Today I have to go out with one of our volunteers to do postering about Janmashtami and the Festival of Colors, as well as our nightly yoga classes. We have 3 posters for any bulletin board or window in which there's enough room. Then we have a meeting with the Sheriff's Department this afternoon at 2 o'clock to discuss their arrangements for security and safety at the Festival of Colors. And we're all for security and safety, but usually their price tag's like $12,000 or something. So anyway, that's one of the things that we got going on today, and so many other things too. My Bobby and I cooked Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday for the buffet, and the traffic in the buffet has really picked up a lot. After COVID, everybody's out, everybody's on the road. The national parks in Utah are packed wall to wall, and inevitably, so many Indian and Western families from all over the world, all over America, all over the world, they somehow they see our billboard in the freeway, or they Google what's interesting, what's vegan, what's vegetarian, what's spiritual, what's yoga, what's Christian in the area. And so many people, it's Advaita Acharya, who greets people 5 days a week coming through the front door. He said it's like a river, and it doesn't stop. It's not just that we get visitors on the weekend or on Sundays, but they're just this time of year especially, and especially because they're out and about after COVID. It's like a river every day. It's like a preaching dream come true. And then schools are going back shortly, and so we have a lot of school trips. At least we did before COVID. We have 2 or 3 different school trips a week where the kids would have lunch, do yoga, lead the lamas around, have a Q&A session, and hear kirtan. So presumably that will resume along with everything else after COVID. There's always lots of service here, but it's special for me to not just be physically here, but to also have this connection with all of you during the week as well. That just adds another level of satisfaction, another area of fulfillment for me to be able to reach out to all of you, and so much appreciation for you taking the time to be with us. Rakesh, Brent, Jean, William, Govindadev, Raleigh, Jayashree, Anjali, Prashant, sorry, Dhirubhai, Haribol, my good friend Dhirubhai, Raquel, Haribol, Raquel, Gail, Rishangi, she says amazing story of the elderly dancing devotee. Let's see if there's anyone else. Thank you, Dayaniti. You like the zucchini burger. Yeah, go to Malati Preeti. Malati, Malati, Preeti. Go to her Facebook page. She's reposted it, but that's the way to track it down. I want to get that recipe. Well, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow for Motivational Wisdom Wednesday. And we'll start by talking about Maharaj Prataparuda, who took his crown and his hands with rings and jewels and all royal accoutrement, and actually did place them in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, and use those assets to perfect himself and to set a wonderful example of leadership for his family members, for his citizens, and for his generation there several hundred years ago in Orissa. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,